The night was quiet, only the sound of crickets filled the air. The human farmer, David, was walking through his garden with a lantern in his hand. He had worked all day, and now he only wanted to check his crops before sleep. But then, he noticed something strange. A shadow moved between the rows of vegetables, small and quick. David stopped. His heart beat faster. Was it an animal? A thief? He lowered the lantern and walked slowly. The shadow bent down, lifted something from the ground, and ran. David caught a glimpse. It was not an animal. It was a child, thin and trembling, clutching a piece of bread he had left on the table outside. The boy's skin was pale blue, his hair tangled, his clothes torn and dirty. His eyes glowed faintly in the dark. David froze. It was an alien child. His first thought was anger. This creature had stolen from him. But when he looked closer, he saw the boy's ribs showing, his arms shaking as if he had no strength left. The child looked back, terrified, and ran. David could have shouted, he could have chased him away, but something inside him whispered to follow. Quietly, David began walking after the boy. The boy was fast, but his weak body slowed him down. He stumbled many times, still clutching the bread tightly, as if it was treasure. The night grew colder as they reached the edge of the forest. The boy vanished into the trees. David followed, his lantern light dancing on the path. Every step was heavy with doubt. Should he be doing this? What if it was a trap? But curiosity, mixed with a strange feeling of pity, pulled him forward. After a while, David saw the boy again. The child stopped near a broken hut hidden under thick branches. He pushed the door open carefully, almost too weak to move it, and slipped inside. David moved closer. He kept his distance, peering through a crack in the wooden wall. Inside the hut, the boy knelt beside a figure lying on the ground. It was a woman, an alien woman. Her skin was the same pale blue, her face thin and hollow. Her eyes were closed, her chest rising and falling slowly, as if breathing was painful. The boy placed the stolen bread beside her lips, whispering softly, "Mother, please eat. Please wake up." The boy's voice was weak but full of hope. David felt his throat tighten. He expected to see a thief enjoying his stolen food. Instead, he saw a desperate child trying to save his dying mother. The bread was not stolen for greed, it was stolen for survival. The woman opened her eyes weakly. She saw the bread, then her son. Her lips trembled as she tried to smile, but she was too weak. With shaking hands, she tried to push the bread back toward him. Her whisper barely reached David's ears. "You eat, my son, not me." The boy shook his head fiercely, tears in his glowing eyes. He pushed the bread back to her, begging her to eat. The moment was painful to watch. David realized this child was ready to starve, only to keep his mother alive. The human stood frozen, hidden in the shadows. His anger had vanished. In its place grew something else, shame and pity. He had food, a warm bed, a safe life. Yet here, not far from his home, a child and his mother were fighting death with stolen crumbs. David's grip on the lantern tightened. His heart was heavy. He could not walk away now, not after seeing this. And so the story began, with a hungry thief and the human who followed him into the darkness, not knowing his life was about to change forever. David stood outside the broken hut, his lantern flickering in the cold wind. His chest was heavy, his mind filled with questions. Why was this alien mother and child here? Why were they left to starve in silence? He hesitated, his hand tightening on the wooden doorframe. If the villagers found out he was even near this place, they would never forgive him, but his feet moved forward anyway. The wooden door creaked as he pushed it open a little more. The boy turned quickly, his glowing eyes wide with fear. He shielded his mother with his small, fragile body, clutching her hand as if to protect her from the human stranger. David raised his free hand slowly, showing he had no weapon. His voice was low, careful. "I will not hurt you." The boy shook his head, his lips trembling. He did not trust easily, not after all the hunger and fear. His mother opened her eyes weakly, her voice barely a whisper. "Leave us. Please, leave us." David stepped closer, and for the first time, he saw the condition of the woman clearly. Her cheeks were hollow, her lips cracked, her clothes torn and covered in dirt. Her breathing came in shallow gasps, as if every breath was a fight. The boy clutched the bread tighter, but his hands shook so badly the bread nearly fell apart. David swallowed hard. His anger from earlier had melted away. Now he only felt guilt. He had food stored in his home, enough to last the winter. Yet this child had risked everything for one small loaf. "Do you have water?" David asked gently. The boy did not reply, only stared at him with wide, distrustful eyes. David knelt slowly, setting down his lantern. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small flask of water he always carried. He placed it on the floor and pushed it toward them. The boy looked at the flask, then at his mother. His little hands grabbed it quickly. He opened it with difficulty, then lifted it, and to her lips. The woman sipped weakly, coughing. Her eyes closed again, but her chest rose a little stronger than before. David felt something inside him stir, a strange warmth mixed with sorrow. The sight of a child trying to keep his mother alive broke through every wall of his heart. Minutes passed in silence, broken only by the sound of the woman's shallow breathing. David finally asked, "How long have you been here?" The boy's eyes filled with tears, but he stayed silent. His mother tried to speak, her voice hoarse. Since they drove us out." She coughed again, holding her chest. "They said we were too many mouths to feed, not worth the trouble." David froze, his jaw clenched. He understood now. The nearby settlement, the same villagers who worked beside him, had cast this woman and her child away, leaving them to die. The boy wiped his mother's face with his sleeve, whispering softly in their own alien language. His tiny voice was shaking but gentle. He looked older in that moment, older than any child should be. David rose to his feet. He wanted to leave, to run away from this problem. But as he turned, his eyes caught the boy's hand holding his mother's fingers tightly. Their bond was strong, even in hunger and despair. It struck David like a blade. He stood there for a long moment, then whispered to himself, "If I walk away now, they will not live till morning." The boy looked up at him again, uncertain and afraid. David took a deep breath, then spoke clearly, "I will come back. Do not lose hope." The child didn't answer, but his glowing eyes followed the human as he walked into the night. And in that moment, a silent promise was made, one that would change everything. The night felt colder than usual as David walked back toward his farm. His lantern swung in his hand, but his thoughts were far away. The image of the alien mother lying weak on the floor would not leave his mind. Her hollow face, her trembling lips, her weak voice, it all burned into him. By the time he reached home, he could not rest. He placed the lantern down, sat at his wooden table, and looked at the food he had stored. There was bread, dried meat, potatoes, enough for him alone. He stared at it, shame filling his chest. Outside, in the forest, a woman and her child were fighting death with nothing. Hours passed, but sleep never came. Before dawn, David filled a basket with bread, some boiled potatoes, and a small jar of honey. He hesitated, then added a blanket too. His hands shook, not from fear of the night, but from fear of being discovered by the villagers. Helping outsiders was forbidden. When the first light of morning touched the sky, David walked back to the broken hut. The forest was silent, only the sound of leaves under his boots. He pushed the door slowly, the creak echoing inside. The boy sat awake, holding his mother's hand. His glowing eyes widened when he saw David again. He stood quickly, ready to shield her, but David raised the basket slowly, showing what he brought. "I came to help," David whispered. The boy's lips parted in shock. He looked at his mother, then back at David. His small body trembled as if he wanted to believe but could not. David knelt, set the basket down, and stepped back, his hands open, showing no harm. The smell of food filled the hut. The boy's stomach growled loudly. His face turned red with shame. He reached for the bread but stopped. His mother opened her weak eyes. Her voice was like a dry wind. "No, not for me. Not from him." David's chest tightened. She still did not trust him. Her eyes were heavy with pride. In fear, she had been cast out, humiliated, left to die. Why should she believe any human now? But then the boy knelt beside her. He held the bread with both hands and whispered, "Mother, please, you must eat. You will die if you don't." His voice cracked, and tears rolled down his cheeks. The woman's hand trembled as she touched his face. Her lips moved slowly. "I cannot take what is stolen, child." David's voice cut through the silence, soft but firm. "It is not stolen. I brought it for you. I have more than I need. You have nothing. Take it." The mother's eyes turned to him, weak but sharp. Why? Why help us? David swallowed hard. He did not have a clear answer. His heart simply refused to walk away. Because no one deserves to die like this. Not you, not your boy. The woman's gaze softened, though her body still trembled. Finally, with her son's help, she lifted the bread to her lips. She bit slowly, painfully, but she ate. Tears slipped down the boy's cheeks as he smiled for the first time. David stayed silent, watching them, his chest heavy but also lighter at the same time. For a moment, the hut was filled with a strange warmth, hope, fragile but alive. But as the woman chewed, she suddenly coughed violently. Her body shook, her face pale as snow. She gasped for air, clutching her chest. The boy cried out, holding her. "Mother, please, no!" David rushed forward without thinking. He held her shoulders steady. "Breathe slowly. Don't force it." His hands were firm, his voice calm. After long moments, her coughing eased, and she fell back weakly, her breath shallow again. David looked at her thin frame, her weak heartbeat, her shaking hands. He realized food alone would not be enough. She needed care, medicine, strength, things this broken hut could not give. The boy looked at David with pleading eyes, his voice trembling. "Please, save her." David stared back, his jaw tight. In that moment, he knew his life had changed forever. He could no longer pretend he was just a farmer. He had stepped into their world, and now their survival depended on him. The morning sun broke through the forest leaves, painting the broken hut in dim light. David sat on the ground near the door, his back against the wooden wall. His lantern was cold now, and his basket almost empty. The boy and his mother had eaten a little, but the woman was still too weak. Her breathing was shallow, her hands trembling. Every sound of her cough made David's chest tighten. He wanted to do more, but he knew one truth: helping them openly was dangerous. The villagers had strict rules. Aliens were not to be trusted. They were seen as burdens, thieves, even curses. If anyone discovered David had given them food, he would be called a traitor. Worse, they might burn the hut and leave the mother and child to die. The boy sat beside his mother, his glowing eyes fixed on David. There was fear in those eyes, but also something else. Hope, fragile and uncertain. Finally, David broke the silence. His voice was steady but quiet. "She cannot stay like this. Food alone will not save her. She needs care. She needs medicine." The boy's lips trembled. "Medicine?" David nodded. "Yes, but I cannot bring it here. If I'm seen with herbs, the villagers will know something is wrong. They will follow me." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You must trust me. You both need to come with me to my farm." The boy's eyes widened. His mother stirred weakly, forcing her eyes open. "No," she whispered. Her voice cracked, but her tone was firm. "We cannot go with him." David looked at her, surprised. "If you stay here, you will die. Do you not see it?" The woman coughed, clutching her chest. Better to die here than to be a burden. Your people hate us. They will kill us." Her words cut deep into David's heart. He could not deny the truth. He had heard the villagers speak before, calling aliens leeches, thieves, worthless. But looking at her, frail and desperate, and at the boy clinging to her side, he could not accept that fate. David leaned forward, his voice firm. "Listen to me. I am not like them. If I wanted to harm you, I would not be here. I could have left you in the night, but I came back. I brought food. I brought water. I offer my home. You may refuse, but if you do, your son will soon have no mother." The hut fell silent. The boy tightened his grip on her hand, tears rolling down his cheeks. "Mother, please, we cannot stay here. We will die." Her lips trembled. She looked at him, then at David. Her pride was heavy, but so was her weakness. Finally, her head sank back onto the thin blanket beneath her. Her whisper was barely audible. If you betray us, may the stars curse you." David nodded solemnly. "I will not betray you, I promise." The boy looked at David, hope and fear mixing in his glowing eyes. "When?" "Tonight," David replied. "When the village sleeps, I will come. Be ready. No sound, no light. We must move quietly." The boy nodded. His small hands clutching the blanket tighter, David rose to his feet. He picked up the empty basket and lantern. His heart beat fast, not from fear of the mother, but from fear of what would happen if they were caught. Every step he took toward the door felt heavy, but inside him burned a decision, clear and strong. He would not walk away, not now. He would risk his farm, his name, even his life. As David stepped into the morning light, the mother closed her eyes again. The boy whispered into her ear, "Mother, we are saved. He will take us home." But David knew the truth. It was not salvation yet. It was only the beginning of danger, and the night ahead would decide everything. The moon was high when David returned. The forest was quiet. Only the sound of night birds echoed in the distance. In his hand was a thick blanket and a small bag filled with dried meat and herbs. He moved carefully, each step measured. If anyone saw him leaving the village at this hour, questions would rise. When he reached the broken hut, the boy was waiting at the door, his glowing eyes lit with relief. The mother still lay inside, weak and pale. David entered quickly, whispering, "We must leave now." The boy nodded and tried to help his mother sit up, but her body was too fragile. She winced with every small movement, her lips trembling. David knelt beside her, wrapping the blanket gently around her thin shoulders. He whispered, "Forgive me." Before lifting her carefully in his arms, the woman resisted weakly, her voice faint. "No, I can walk." "You cannot," David said firmly, "and we cannot waste time. Trust me." The boy followed closely, carrying the small bag. His little steps were quick but quiet. They moved through the forest slowly, David's lantern covered with cloth to hide its light. Every sound felt louder than it should. A snapping branch, a rustle of leaves, each one made David's heart pound. If the villagers saw them, there would be no mercy. Helping aliens was not just frowned upon, it was hated. Finally, they reached David's farm. The boy looked at the small wooden house with wide eyes. It was simple but warm, smoke still curling from the chimney. David pushed the door open quietly. He carried the mother inside and laid her gently on his bed. The room smelled of wood and earth. The mother's eyes fluttered open. She looked around, confusion in her weak gaze. "This is your home?" she whispered. "Yes," David answered. "You are safe here, but you must stay hidden. No one can know." The boy placed the bag of food beside her. His hands shook with relief. "Thank you, human," he whispered. His voice cracked with emotion. David gave him a small smile, but his mind was heavy. He knew this kindness could destroy him. If the villagers discovered the truth, they would call him a traitor. They would burn his farm, maybe even take his life. The following days passed in silence. David went to the fields during the day, pretending life was normal. At night, he returned to the house quietly, bringing food, herbs, and water. He cleaned the mother's wounds, gave her small sips of broth, and slowly, her strength began to return. But secrecy had its price. One evening, while David was stacking firewood outside, a neighbor passed by. The man stopped, narrowing his eyes. "You've been busy these nights, haven't you? Always going to the forest." David's heart skipped. He forced a calm smile. "Hunting rabbits, nothing more." The neighbor chuckled, though his gaze lingered. "Strange, I haven't seen any rabbits near your farm in months." He shrugged and walked away, but suspicion hung in the air. Inside, the boy whispered, "They know, don't they?" David shook his head, though doubt pressed heavily on him. "Not yet, but we must be careful. No sound, no light when I'm gone, understand?" The boy nodded, pressing his lips tightly. He held his mother's hand, his small body tense with fear. Later that night, as David watched the mother sleep, he realized something. This secret was no longer just his burden. It was their lifeline, and if it broke, they would all fall together. He leaned back against the wall, whispering to himself, "No one must know, not yet." But outside, beyond the safety of the walls, whispers were already spreading. The villagers had begun to wonder why David's lantern often disappeared into the woods. The secret was kept, but for how long? The days passed slowly. Each night David carried food and water into his house, keeping the alien mother and child hidden. He spoke little in the village, avoided long conversations, and tried to act normal. But the villagers were not fools. They noticed the change. One evening, while David returned from the fields, he saw two men whispering near the well. Their eyes turned toward him, their voices lowered. David's chest grew heavy. Rumors were spreading. He knew it. Inside his home, the boy was helping his mother sip warm broth. She was stronger than before but still pale and thin. When David entered, the boy rushed to him, whispering quickly, "They are watching you. I saw men near the trees last night." David froze. His fears were true. The villagers were suspicious. He sat on the chair heavily, running his hand through his hair. "If they find you here..." His words broke off, the image too dangerous to complete. That night, the danger came closer. David stepped outside to bring firewood when he noticed moving lights, lanterns glowing between the trees. Voices carried through the night air, sharp and angry. "There's been food missing from storage," one voice said. "Someone is feeding those outsiders, I swear it." David's breath caught, his fists clenched. He moved quickly back into the house, closing the door softly. The boy stared at him wide-eyed. "What is it?" David put a finger to his lips. "Quiet," he whispered. His ears caught the sound of boots crushing leaves. The villagers were searching, and they were close. The mother stirred weakly, trying to rise. "They cannot see us," she whispered, her voice trembling. David's mind raced. He looked around his small house, then hurried to the cellar door. He pulled it open, pointing inside. "Go, both of you, quickly!" The boy hesitated, fear in his glowing eyes. "But, no questions," David hissed. "Go, now." He helped the mother down into the dark cellar, her body weak against his arms. The boy followed, holding her hand tightly. David lowered the wooden trapdoor gently, covering it with a rug, just as fists banged against the door. "David!" a voice called from outside. "Open up!" David's heart thundered in his chest. He forced a calm face and unlatched the door. 3 villagers stood outside, lanterns bright, their eyes sharp and suspicious. "What brings you here so late?" David asked evenly, though sweat rolled down his back. One man stepped forward. "We've heard stories. You go to the woods at night, you carry food. Why? What are you hiding?" David gave a small laugh, though his voice was tight. "Food? I have rabbits in my traps, that is all. You think I'm wasting food on shadows?" The second man sniffed, peering past David into the house. His gaze lingered on the table, the fire still burning in the hearth. David's muscles tensed. "May we come in?" the man asked coldly. For a moment, David thought the ground would give way beneath him. His body stood firm, but his mind screamed in panic. If they stepped inside, they would hear the faint breathing beneath the floorboards. David crossed his arms, his tone steady. "It's late, and my house is small. There's nothing here. If you doubt me, search my traps yourself tomorrow, but you'll find only empty snares." The men exchanged looks. The first one narrowed his eyes. "We will be watching you, farmer. If you are lying, we'll know." David gave a stiff nod, closing the door as they turned away. He stood there for long minutes, listening to their fading voices. Only when silence returned did he lift the rug and open the cellar. The boy climbed out first, his small body shaking. His mother followed weakly, her eyes wide with fear. "They will not stop," she whispered. "They will come again." David knelt beside her, his voice quiet but firm. "Then we must be smarter. We will not let them find you. I swore I would protect you, and I will." The boy threw his arms around David, surprising him. His tiny voice cracked. "Thank you. Thank you for not giving us up." David closed his eyes, holding the boy for a moment. The risk had grown. The walls of secrecy were closing in. It had been a close call, too close. And David knew the next time escape might not be possible. The close call left David restless. Days passed, but the memory of the villagers' lanterns burned in his mind. He became more careful, leaving food and water in hidden baskets, never carrying too much at once. Yet no amount of caution could prepare him for what came next. It began with a cough. At first, it was faint, only a small sound from the alien mother at night. David thought it was nothing, just weakness from hunger. But the cough grew louder, harsher. Her body shook each time, leaving her breathless and pale. The boy sat beside her, worry etched into his glowing eyes. "Mother, please, drink more water," he begged, holding the flask to her lips. She tried, but the water spilled as her hands trembled. David watched in silence, his stomach tight. He had seen sickness before, but this was different. Her skin burned with fever, yet her body shook as if frozen. She whispered in broken words, It spreads fast among us, once it begins." Her eyes filled with tears, not for herself, but for her son. The boy clung to her arm, shaking his head. "No, you will not leave me. You promised." His voice cracked with desperation. David knelt beside her, his hand pressing against her forehead. It was hot, too hot. He cursed under his breath. He knew herbs that could help, but they were rare, and the villagers guarded them closely. Anyone seen gathering too much would be questioned. That night, David made his decision. He wrapped himself in a thick cloak and slipped into the forest. The moon guided his steps as he searched the dark earth for the healing plants he remembered from his childhood: bitterroot, nightleaf, red moss. He knew where they grew, but finding them was dangerous. His hands dug through cold soil, pulling roots free. Every sound of breaking branches made his heart race. The memory of the villagers' suspicion haunted him. If they caught him out here again, they would know the truth. Hours passed before he returned, his bag filled with herbs. Sweat dripped down his face, though the night was cold. When he entered the house, the boy rushed to him. "She's worse. She won't wake up." David dropped to his knees beside the bed. The woman's breathing was shallow, her lips dry and cracked, her skin glistened with fever. For a moment, fear gripped him. Was he already too late? "No," he muttered to himself. "Not yet." He boiled water quickly, crushing the herbs into it. The bitter smell filled the room. He lifted her head carefully and pressed the cup to her lips. "Drink," he urged softly. The boy helped, holding her chin steady. Slowly she swallowed, her throat trembling with each sip. Minutes dragged into hours. The boy refused to sleep, his small hand clutching his mother's fingers tightly. David stayed awake too, his eyes fixed on her chest, counting every rise and fall. Each shallow breath felt like a battle. At dawn, her fever broke slightly. Her breathing eased, though she remained weak and pale. The boy sighed in relief, resting his head on her arm. Tears slipped silently from his glowing eyes. David leaned back, exhausted. He had risked everything gathering those herbs, and still, it might not be enough, he whispered to himself. She needs more care than I can give. As the sun rose, light filled the room. For the first time in days, the woman's eyes opened. She looked at David, her voice faint but clear. "You saved me." "Why?" David hesitated, then answered with honesty. "Because your son begged me without words, and because I could not let him lose you." Her eyes softened, her lips trembling. She closed them again, drifting into sleep. The boy looked at David, his small voice breaking. "Don't let her die. Please, human. Don't let her die." David placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, firm and steady. "I won't," he promised. Though inside, fear still lingered. Outside, the village stirred, whispers spreading of missing herbs and strange lights. The danger was growing, and David knew. The next storm was already on its way. The house was silent, broken only by the soft crackle of the fire. For 2 days and nights, David barely left the mother's side. He checked her breathing again and again, gave her the bitter herb water, and wiped her burning skin with damp cloth. The boy never let go of her hand. His glowing eyes were red from crying. His small body leaned against the bed, refusing to sleep. He whispered to her again and again, "Stay with me, mother. Please stay." On the third morning, a change came. The fever that had kept her shaking finally began to fade. Her breathing, once shallow and broken, grew steadier. The sweat on her skin cooled, her lips parted, and a faint voice escaped. "Son?" The boy's head shot up. His glowing eyes widened. He let out a cry of joy and clutched her hand tightly. "Mother, you're awake!" His voice cracked, tears of relief streaming down his face. David, who had been sitting near the fire, turned quickly. He moved to her side, his heart racing. Her eyes, weak but alive, blinked open. For the first time, he saw light returning to them. "You should not speak yet," David said gently. "Save your strength." The woman looked at him for a long moment. Her lips trembled and she whispered, "You saved me." David shook his head. "No, your son did. He never gave up. He would not let me walk away." The boy hugged his mother tightly, sobbing into her shoulder. Her frail hand stroked his tangled hair, and for a moment, the room was filled with a warmth David hadn't felt in years. but the peace was fragile. It broke when the woman's gaze moved back to David, her voice low but firm. You risked everything. Why? David hesitated. His hands rested on his knees. He looked at the floor, then back at her. Because leaving you here to die would make me no better than those who cast you out. I am human, but I will not be heartless. Her eyes softened, though a shadow of doubt still lingered. She whispered, If your people learn, they will not spare you. I know, David replied, his voice steady, but some things are worth the risk. For a long moment, silence filled the room, broken only by the boy's quiet breathing as he clung to his mother. Then slowly, she nodded, a single tear slipping down her cheek. The following days brought slow recovery. With each meal David prepared, with every cup of water, her strength grew. Her cheeks filled with a little color. Her voice grew clearer. Though she was still weak, she could sit up now, sometimes even walk a few steps with her son's help. One evening, as the firelight danced across the walls, she looked at David and whispered, You have given me life again, my son. He has a future because of you. For that, I call you Savior. David felt his chest tighten. He had been called many things in the village, farmer, worker, sometimes fool, but never savior. He lowered his eyes, embarrassed. I am no savior. I just did what had to be done. The boy grinned for the first time in many days, his small teeth showing. His glowing eyes sparkled as he said, You are our hero. He threw his arms around David suddenly, hugging him tightly. David froze for a moment, then placed a gentle hand on the boy's back. A strange feeling filled his chest, something he hadn't allowed himself in years, belonging. But outside the small house, whispers were still spreading. The villagers spoke of food missing, herbs vanishing. Lights in the night. Suspicion was growing stronger. Their patience was running out. David knew this peace could not last. The mother had awakened, but with her recovery came a new danger. If the villagers discovered the truth now, they would not hesitate to destroy all three of them. As he watched the boy fall asleep in his mother's arms that night, David whispered to himself, They will not take this from me, not from them. But in the distance, faint torchlight flickered between the trees, a sign that the storm was closer than ever. The night was heavy with silence, but David felt the weight of eyes watching from the trees. For days he had seen shadows moving near his farm. Villagers whispered when he passed by. Their suspicion had turned into certainty. Tonight, it would no longer stay whispers. Inside the house, the alien mother rested on the bed, her strength returning slowly. The boy sat near the fire, tracing circles in the dirt with his finger. His glowing eyes flicked to David when he heard the sound of boots crunching outside. David's body stiffened. He stood, moving to the window. Flames flickered in the distance. Torches. A group of villagers was approaching. The boy's face drained of color. They're coming, he whispered. His voice trembled. The mother tried to rise, her body still weak. We must leave, she urged, her voice breaking. David shook his head, his voice firm. There is no time to run. If we leave now, they will hunt you. If we hide, they will search. There is only one choice. What? The boy asked, fear in his glowing eyes. David clenched his fists. We face them. Moments later, heavy fists pounded against the wooden door. A harsh voice called out, David, open the door. We know what you're hiding. The boy clutched his mother tightly. His small body shook. David placed a steady hand on his shoulder. Stay behind me. No matter what happens, stay silent. He pulled the door open. The night outside burned with light. A dozen villagers stood there, their faces hard with anger. The man in front, Marcus, stepped forward, his voice sharp. We gave you trust. We called you neighbor. And this is what you do? Harboring them? He pointed past David toward the faint figure of the alien mother inside. Murmurs erupted from the crowd. Anger burned in their eyes. Traitor, one hissed. He feeds them while our own go hungry. Another spat. David stood tall, his voice steady though his heart pounded. They are not thieves. They are not enemies. They are a mother and a child. They were dying, and I could not let them die. They are not our kind, Marcus roared. They are parasites. They were cast out for a reason, and you dare defy the village? The boy stepped forward despite his fear, his glowing eyes shining in the firelight. "She is my mother. She did nothing wrong. We only wanted to live." His small voice cracked, but it carried through the night. The crowd fell silent for a moment. Shock flickered across their faces. Many had never heard an alien child speak so directly, so desperately. The mother struggled to her feet, leaning against the wall for support. Her voice was weak but strong in spirit. "If you want to end us, do it now. But know this, my son will remember, and so will your children. They will know you chose cruelty over mercy." Her words struck the villagers. Some lowered their torches slightly, uncertainty creeping into their faces, but Marcus was unmoved. His anger only deepened. "Enough of this!" he shouted, raising his arm. "Step aside, David, or you will fall with them." David's voice cut through the night, sharp and unshaken. "Then I will fall, because I will not betray them." He stepped in front of the mother and child, his body shielding them completely. The crowd wavered, their anger clashing with doubt. No one expected David, the quiet farmer, to see Ubao and descend Ibotitan. Tan like this, his words carried a weight they could not ignore. "You call me a traitor," David said, his eyes burning with resolve. "But what kind of people turn their backs on a starving child? If this is what loyalty means, then I choose compassion instead." Silence hung in the air. Torches flickered. Some villagers exchanged uneasy glances. A few lowered their eyes. Marcus's face twisted with rage. But when he looked back, he saw hesitation in the others. He realized he stood on weakening ground. His voice faltered. "You'll regret this, David." One by one, the villagers turned away, their torches dimming as they walked into the night. Marcus lingered, his glare sharp, before finally retreating into the darkness. David closed the door, his body trembling from the weight of what had just happened. The boy rushed to him, clutching his waist tightly. "You protected us, even when they wanted to kill you." The mother's eyes shone with tears. Her voice cracked. "You stood alone, but you did not bend. For that, you are more than savior. You are family." David looked at them both, his heart heavy but fierce. The battle was not over, but tonight he had chosen his side. The night after the confrontation felt endless. David sat by the fire, staring at the flames. His hands shook slightly, though he tried to hide it. He had stood against his own people, and though the villagers had walked away, their anger had not died. It would return, he knew. The boy slept curled against his mother, his glowing eyes closed at last in peace. The alien woman, though weak, remained awake. Her gaze rested on David, silent for a long time before she whispered, "You risked everything. For strangers." David looked up, his eyes heavy but steady. "You are no strangers to me now. You are life, and life deserves protection." Her lips trembled. She pressed her son closer, whispering words in her own language. Soft, musical, filled with gratitude. David didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. Days passed, and slowly the tension in the village began to fade. Though Marcus still glared whenever David passed, many villagers no longer spoke of the traitor. Perhaps the image of a child crying for his mother had touched something in them. Perhaps their own shame kept them quiet. Whatever the reason, the torches did not return. The mother regained her strength little by little. With David's food and care, her hollow cheeks began to fill. Her voice grew stronger. Sometimes she even managed a small smile. The boy, once thin and trembling, laughed freely now, chasing the chickens outside or helping David carry buckets of water. One morning, the boy ran into the fields where David was working. "Look," he shouted, holding a small flower in his hand. "It's growing again." His glowing eyes shone with joy. For him, every small thing was a miracle. David smiled, though his heart remained guarded. He knew their safety was fragile. One wrong word, one suspicious glance, and it could all be taken away. Yet he also felt something new, a purpose he had not known before. That evening, as the sun set in gold and crimson, the mother stepped outside for the first time, leaning on the doorway for support, her eyes filled with wonder as she looked across the open fields, the sky glowing above. "It has been so long since I saw a horizon without fear," she whispered. David stood beside her, silent for a moment before saying softly, "You are safe here, as long as I breathe." She turned to him, her eyes shimmering. "Then we will call this home." For the boy, the farm became a world of adventure. For the mother, it became a place of healing. For David, it became something else entirely. A chance to rewrite what it meant to be human in a world filled with cruelty. One night, as they sat together by the fire, the boy looked at David and asked quietly, "Are we your family now?" David's chest tightened. He had lived years in loneliness, his house silent, his meals shared with no one. Now 2 pairs of eyes looked at him with trust, with love. He placed a hand on the boy's shoulder and nodded. "Yes, you are my family." The mother's eyes filled with tears. Her voice shook. "You gave us life when no one else would. You gave us dignity when others gave us shame. That is what family means." The fire crackled, warming the small room. For the first time in years, David felt whole. The weight of the villagers' judgment still lingered beyond his walls, but inside, there was only peace. The road ahead would not be easy, but they had survived the storm together. From a hungry thief in the night to a bond unbroken by fear, their story had changed from despair to hope. And as the boy drifted to sleep in his mother's arms, David whispered to himself, "This is not the end. This is the beginning."